Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for April 25th. Well, a lot of things to kind of go over here, in terms of today's events, themes of the day I will get to, but first, risk disclaimer. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes, only, not giving any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things kind of adding up to the same thing, meaning, for example, this horrible situation with this FRC bank was down, I think, like 50% for the day, bringing down the whole group. The regional bank ETF broke its lows. That just kind of, overall just spills to a bit of, risk off across the board. So we can look at this first, kind of get this out of the way here. The regional bank ETF did break the lows. There wasn't, the one thing that was interesting about this is, since this dropped back in the beginning of March, there really hasn't been much much of a bounce, right? From a very technical standpoint, and this is why, like, the technicals mean so much, I think, to me, because just overlaying this with simply like a 5-day moving average, a 20-day moving average, the price never got above the 20-day moving average. It tested it, right? And when things are trending in a down direction or up direction, these short-term moving averages act so well, because they'll bounce right up into them, and if they can't overcome and can't change the trend, you can have your opinions all that you like, but if something is down this hard and it can't reverse its trend, it's telling you that there's still trouble there, right? For this thing to never really rebound, just kind of told you that there was some problems that linger. So yes, FRC, I mean, pretty amazing, all the way down to $8. I think it went a little bit shy of that, but same thing, just a different looking a bit different looking chart, but same pattern, right? This thing, got down to the lows in the beginning of March and no bounce, and then broke the lows pretty decently on earnings. I mean, it's down 50% move, incredible. And a whole bunch of talk about who they're talking to, and they've talked to the Fed, and so I mean, this bank is probably done, I would think, and it's going to go into another receivership, and then you're going to have to figure out, like, is there going to be more behind this? And I'll get to, like, my thoughts on the Fed and so forth too, but bottom line is, the breadth was horrendous for the day, all day. It's one of the indicators that I use quite frequently, to kind of gauge the sense of, if there's buying pressure or selling pressure. The breadth indicator that we use looks at what's known as up volume versus down volume. So again, it's a little bit different than looking at just advancers versus decliners. Associating volume along with that really gives you a sense, if there is a big liquidation day, or if there's really like a big accumulation day, and today was just that. So as we kind of we're getting close to concluding the month of April, and just interesting how this month has been. We have basically gone nowhere, and now I think we're down for the month. If I want to look at the percentages, month to date, SPY's just down about 1%. The Qs, which have been leading this year, are down 3.4%. That's actually worse right now than what the small caps are doing, right? So even though the small caps in a downtrend, the Qs reverted back pretty decently. Look at the ARC ETF, down 11% now for the month. I mean, that's a pretty decent hit, and still up, even after that hit of 11%, still up 15% year to date. FFTY, which is the IBD 50, which had a really nice week last week, is giving that back quite quickly. That's down 4.3% now over the last 5 days. So a lot of red on the screen. GDX was the only thing that I see that finished green on the day, so pretty defensive. The VIX, one of the things that kind of stood out, which we kind of talked about briefly last week, and we talked a little bit about in the weekend video, was that the volatility of the VIX itself, right? So this is the VVIX, right, which didn't really move too much today, but kind of gave a little bit of a warning, right? It started to shoot up last week, right? And the VIX wasn't doing that. So again, sometimes you can get a little bit of a hint that something's not right or something's awry. If we look at the VIX chart itself, you know, it didn't close on the highs. You know, so again, overall, it's still, you know, decently under 20. I think it almost got to 20 today, but so we'll see. You know, just like when we talk about when the market goes up one day, it's the same thing when it goes down one day. You know, one day is not a trend, so we'll figure out if this VIX, you know, I think really the 20 level will be something interesting to watch. Let me go to the Qs because they did break pretty decently. I've been watching them pretty closely, right? So even though we've got some earnings after the close, you know, so Microsoft I think is up a little bit. You know, some of these are basically, you know, you know, Microsoft is back to where it was last week. You know, that's sometimes what happens with these names. It's just kind of crazy how it unfolds, that it sells off so hard into the earnings quarter, all right, and then it jumps. So if you bought this thing like in the last hour of the day, you did okay. But if you have been accumulating over the last couple of weeks, it's basically just right back to where it was. So again, I think you're going to see this a lot for some of these bigger companies. You know, they're doing okay. We'll hear more about them on their earnings call. But overall, you know, it's like really tough to get these things to move. Google is up about $4, and that's back to basically where it was 2 weeks ago. So again, they just sold off so decently into the close. I think the best one that I saw is Chipotle, which is up to 1900. I mean, that's a commanding move, and it kind of can, you know, goes along with some of the other restaurants, like, you know, McDonald's came out with good earnings. You know, McDonald's just actually sold off here. You know, but this thing ran up so much. But yeah, I mean, Chipotle, you know, very interesting. And the solar names are down on ENPH. I guess their orders were a little bit light. You know, interesting. This is one I thought, you know, that they have such good earnings moves. I actually played this one for earnings, which didn't work out. You know, I put on earnings trades all the time. But really good history of earnings, and this one really going down pretty decently. I guess their guidance was a little bit light. They see Q2 revenue 770, 750. They were looking for 773. So again, right now, you know, we are seeing this, that if you bring down your guidance, you are getting hit. Texas Instruments, which also had a pretty nasty day, that continuing lower, trying to bounce a little bit off the lows. But, you know, here's what, so I think for the Qs, right, I think this is going to take this week to kind of sort itself out. But, you know, you may have a retest of the 50-day moving average in here. Notice that's a pretty decisive break. It wasn't on huge volume, but you could see that's a break of this channel that I had just recently drawn, and a break inside the value area. So a couple levels to watch, right? Because as we said, one day is not a trend. If this retakes 311.89 tomorrow, right, then we're just back into this range, right? And maybe we had a little bit of a washout, right? Another thing to watch too is we did take out this 1 hour VPOC. So again, you can see this trend line that I had drawn, right? We were making a series of lower highs and lower lows, right? And then finally, you know, we had the washout today. And again, just a very odd. I always find this interesting, even on the up days as well, right? Somebody just was relentlessly selling and wanted the indices to close on the lows today, and they did it. They achieved it. So what I would watch for tomorrow is you know, basically this virgin point of control, right? So this lines up very closely with that top of value, or excuse me, yeah, top of value on the daily. Remember, we're only going to have a couple more days of April, so it's going to be time to start looking at you know, what the May charts look like. But this is right around 311. So again, this is important because, you know, we're coming in and testing. This is a high volume area that we haven't revisited, right? So now that we've taken it out and bounced, the next thing is going to be, can we stay above it? All right, so 311, and again, that other level to watch on the Qs is 311.89. Now that would be even better if price got above there. If it doesn't, then I think that you have to kind of just realize that this is a technical break, right? If it breaks back below. Again, if you look at some of the other groups, look at what's happening with the semiconductors, right? They got hit really hard today. They were down 3%, right? And a lot of stocks, I saw a lot of growth stocks that were down anywhere from like 3 to 6%. I was long, I got stopped out in a few trades today. This was not a good day for me. I got stopped out in Rambus, but I mean, good thing. I mean, look at this name, and again, I took this off before it went down this much, but this is a break. This is a nasty break out of this, right? And this day, 6.8%. I always get questions from members. What's the news on the, I got a question today on a stock that was down 2%. Is there any news? No, it's just the fact, like, there's no news on this stock either. Down 6.8%. I mean, that's how some of these momentum names are going to move. They don't move gently, especially when there's a move to the downside. So bottom line, I think that you have to respect that there's a technical break that's happened. We'll see if we can stay above that level in the Qs. The S&P is still above the value area, but if it continues to slide, I would watch what happens here at the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. And we'll just kind of have to go from there. But it looks like now, again, that this is a lower, it took a while to figure this out, but it looks like this is a lower high from where we were in February, right? Got close a couple times. And, it's just interesting, every time that we started to approach turning the corner, just a lot of selling going on. All right. So we'll see what happens in the aftermarket with some of these earnings names. And as a reminder, we have a lot more earnings to come through the rest of the week. Also, if you want to look at, I haven't talked too much about this, but when you have an event like this with a bank, what is the Fed going to do here? Are they going to be stubborn and raise this interest rate one more time just to save their to talk about saving their credibility? I think I think they need to be forward looking. I think if they continue to kind of be adamant like this, they're going to cause some real damage. So notice that, again, you're seeing this shift, right? What I'm talking about is once you get to the end of the year, once again, the market is starting to price in interest rate cuts. So I think they have to be really careful. If they so choose to raise interest rates next week by 25 basis points, I mean, that's what the market is still implying. I think it would be very prudent for them to say that they're going to stop raising interest rates. If not, I think they're going to cause some real pain in the stock market and some other areas such as the banks with their their ways. And the crazy thing about this is, the more that they step on the accelerator of tightening, the faster, in history, you can kind of go back to history for some of these reactions. But we've seen the Fed do this before, so adamant about raising interest rates, and they seem to have a pattern of going too far, and then they have to cut very fast. So I don't really understand what they think they're doing with with being so adamant that they're going to need raise interest rates. I mean, we're seeing just besides this FRC bank, you have to wonder who's the next one to go. So in any event, I'll leave it here, but I think at this point, it's a dangerous thing that they're doing, that they're playing with in terms of they're trying to save face with their credibility. So we'll see how it unfolds. That meeting is going to come at you next week on the 3rd. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.